Okay, over the years, I have watched as my mother, my auntie, and also white women, and black women as well, have done things where they'll tell a little boy or tell their son one thing, but then they'll tell their daughter or someone else's daughter the total extreme opposite. And they don't start when boys get older. Oh, no, 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 no. They start when, as soon as little boys are old enough to walk, that's when they start with the toxic indoctrination. Even if the little boy can't physically comprehend 100% of what they're saying. I mean, well, I know with black women, they start with the toxic indoctrination as soon as a little boy is old enough to walk. With black men, I've never seen a black man start with the toxic indoctrination before a child is at least 5 to 6 years old. This is my observation. Men, they'll at least wait till a child's like in kindergarten, first grade before they start teaching them that toxic stuff. And what I'm about to say, it's going to sound awful. It's going to sound horrible. It does not mean I'm a whore. It does not mean that I embrace or espouse or teach these things, because I do not. I'm just going to talk about what I've observed over the years, coming from women and to a lesser degree from men on both sides of the racial divide. And I'm not releasing men from their hand in this. I'm not. Because there's more than enough black women addressing men's side of this issue. And for the most part, men and also mainstream society ignores them most of the time. You have a select few people who will give women of color a voice on, men being stuck in the same cycles for 50, 100, 500 years. But the number of people who will give women of color a voice, especially the ones not in America, is very, very small. So anyway, I'm going to get into it with the toxic indoctrination and what a lot of black female influencers refer to as modern mammies and the modern mammy mentality. And here's what I've observed those types of females doing. And again, this is going to sound really bad, but I'll start with my own personal experience in my own family before talking about other people's families and other races. Now, with my own mother and my auntie, when I was younger, they used to tell me things like, a man is never going to be loyal to you. They only care about themselves. That's why you should have at least 5 men minimum that you're dating. One to help you pay your bills, another to help you pay for a car, another one to make sure that your nails get done, another man to make sure that your hair gets done, another man who takes you out to movies, another man who will help you to fix your car if it breaks down, another man who will help you to go shopping and to wear nice clothes so you can afford decent clothing. And granted, I understand where they're coming from, because they're coming from a community where most of the men are either in the military or they've moved away to other neighborhoods of other races, and they're not building up the economy in their own neighborhood. you know um and then you have some who go to jail. You have that too. So I understand where they're coming from, because in the community they come from, like 90% of the households is just women, because most of the men are either in the military and they're enlisted, or they've moved away to neighborhoods of other races, or they went to jail. Okay, I get it. I understand that this may be a habit that a lot of women adopted so that they don't have to walk around, looking like they're homeless and having almost nothing and no car to drive and having very little enjoyment in life. But at the same time, I have feelings. You know, I have feelings. And I'm also not the kind of woman who can have almost any man that I want anywhere. My auntie, she's the kind of woman, she's really dark skinned, high cheekbones, long hair, and the real wide round hips and the tiny waist, like the whole nine. She's short. Like my auntie, she could have almost any man she wanted anywhere. Okay, yeah, she could do that easily. Me, no, not so much. I'm just average looking. I don't have a body like hers. I don't have a face like hers. Yeah, I got long, thick hair, thicker than hers. But do I have all that other stuff going on? No, I'm just a nerd and I need braces and I need glasses. I don't have it like that, not on that level. So the advice they were giving me, for one, it was not realistic for me because I'm average looking and I'm a nerd and I'm not popular. With males, you have to be the lady who everyone wants in order to live like that and still be valued and sought after for marriage. That's how it works with men. The more other men want you, the more they want you, the more likely they are to marry you or date you. And if nobody's after you for your attention to date you or marry you, if you're not in high demand, then men, they don't value you because you're not going to increase their clout without that level of popularity or money. That's the gist of it. You got to have social clout or money, or the dudes, they're like, nah, I don't want it. And if I give you some penis, I'm going to ration how much you're allowed to have. Like, that's how they think, especially if they're dark skinned, because they profit from the financial abuse and mass incarceration of other men. They profit from the toxic indoctrination of other men that leaves them sucking each other's dicks and beating up women for not being what they want after they get out of jail or get out of the military. But anyway, getting back to the main point, with the whole toxic indoctrination thing, I was told to have multiple different boyfriends for multiple different needs in order to have a better standard of living and to be able to own a decent car and have decent clothes and to look nice. Okay, and I have feelings. I actually need someone to care about me. I actually need someone to give a shit about me. Because socially, my life has been pretty fucking hard socially in communities where there are not other women who are like me and also a nerd too. It's been so very, very hard. So yeah, I need that emotional component of a relationship. I do. And if so anyway, this is, I was taught one thing, to not settle, to not be loyal because men are not going to be loyal. But then my brothers were taught something totally different. My brothers were told, oh, a woman is not supposed to have desire for sex. And if your girlfriend has to move away to her family hundreds of miles away or thousands of miles away, and if she has to wait 3 years or 5 years to marry you, it's okay. It's okay to do that because a good woman is not supposed to have any desire for sex. And if she has any desire for sex and companionship while you're separated from her for several months or several years at a time, then she's a whore. If she's ever had sex with any more than just one man at any point in her entire life, oh, well, she's a whore and she's someone who you should not marry. This is literally the type of stuff that I watched being taught to my brothers. I don't have any sisters. Most of my darkest skinned cousins, they don't give birth to daughters. And if they get lucky, maybe they might get pregnant with one girl. Maybe. I'm the only girl my mother has, and she doesn't value me because I'm female. She even told me to my face, I don't need you because I have 2 sons. And with my children, who were taken away from me after I got beat down financially and socially and in fraud in multiple different ways, my children who were stolen, none of them are girls. I don't have any daughters. And my body is so damaged, maybe I never will have a daughter, because the fact of the matter is, I don't want to live the lifestyle that my dark-skinned supermodel type auntie was recommending. I don't want to live that lifestyle because I know that I will end up suicidal, most likely, if I live like that. I know I could possibly, she's a depressed alcoholic. She's a depressed alcoholic. Even though she married, she never found a man to really love her for who she is. She never really found decent, better friends who's like true friends, a good character. She never really found that real love that's lacking in so many people in this world. And so she depressed and drinks a lot and hides it. And I'm glad I didn't take her advice, because if I had taken her advice, I would have been more depressed and more suicidal. And I'm not trying to be like that. I don't, I understand logically the financial benefits of possibly having 4, 5, or 6 different boyfriends for different things, because for one thing, you can look better, you can have reliable transportation, you can have help when you need it. But the reality is, I don't look like a supermodel like my very, very dark-skinned auntie. I just don't. There are homeless men who look at me like I'm not shit, like I don't deserve to even be dealt with, even on the level of just a companion. They're not trying to go to the park with me to feed ducks. They're not trying to go to, McDonald's for a dollar menu to hang out and to play games. They're not trying to have a barbecue or a cookout with me. They're not trying to come over to say what's up, how you doing, and play cards. They ain't trying to do shit with me. It's like you either giving me some booty with no effort and no companionship, or you're not doing it. And if you're not doing it, I'm gone. And that is the standard that homeless men expected me to meet, which I did not do. I knew that the minute they got homes, the minute they got jobs, they were going to ignore my ass. So I actually never had sex with any of the people I met, the guys I met while I was homeless in the shelter. After I got a home, nobody was calling me trying to be a companion, trying to be a friend, trying to invite me to participate in anything big or small. Nobody was trying to ask me out on any real dates, because they're looking at me, they're like, oh, well, you don't have social status, you're not popular, you don't have money, and on top of that, you don't look like a supermodel, so why should I waste my time and effort on you? That's the attitude. There's even one homeless guy, he was getting evicted, and I was trying to be nice because I know how it feels to be in that position. And he responded to my kindness with a nasty attitude and called me a miserable loser, and he left and didn't even say thank you for nothing that I did, just trying to be nice and trying to be in contact with another human being. Men, like, even when they got nothing, they can be really ugly when they think you have nothing to contribute to their life, socially or financially, because of your physical appearance or lack of money or lack of social status. Like most men, they are gold diggers. They just approach their gold digging in a somewhat different way from what females do it. But then again, and then you have other men they'll do their gold digging in exactly the same identical way a female would. That's the reality of life. And it can be dangerous or risky making a statement like this with other females physically in front of you watching, because especially if it's a white woman, because some individual white women, they can get real hostile if you say something like that and one of them is present. And that is because they know that when they have nothing and they don't have money and they don't have social status, they know that they benefit from men of color who are looking for a come up, who are looking for an increase in status. They know this. And the more attractive women who are more hostile and don't want it said, they know they benefit from that because they're seen as a status symbol. And they don't want another female physically saying that it's their physical appearance or their tribal ethnic privilege or whatever. And by tribal, I mean that can also include white, because white is a tribe. The women who benefit most from this dynamic, sometimes they're the ones who will respond with anger or violence if you speak up on it. Sometimes they'll respond with anger or violence if you just say something as small as, hey, American Black people are less than 12% of America's population. You can't even say something as small as that. And the response is hostility. And if you put up with that hostility day after day after day, until you finally just come apart emotionally and you raise your voice, or you're just really emotional and you just been pushed beyond your limits, then they'll say, oh, yeah, she's just a worthless Black bitch, and that's the proof right there. They'll push even the nicest, shyest, most kind, intelligent women to become a totally different person. I'm not even the same person I used to be. Like I said, I've always been a compassionate person. Even if you look at my birth chart from the Hindu Vedic standpoint, I was literally born for the purpose of being a humanitarian and a mediator between conflicting parties, and to show kindness to the poor. This is literally what I was born to do. It shows in my birth chart. It shows in just how my life went long before I even knew what my birth chart was. And these motherfuckers, they even changed me to an extent. From year after year after year of the emotional and physical and financial bashing and fraud, they change you so much. And then when you finally push back, when you finally raise your voice, or you finally is just emotional to the point where you can't hide it anymore, then they're like, oh, see, I told you she's just a worthless, angry Black bitch. Oh, see, I told you she's just a dumb monkey. This is what people do, because a lot of people ain't shit. Like, really. A lot of Black men do this too. It's not just people of other races. A lot of Black men do it because they ain't shit. That's the gaslighting. Everybody has their breaking point, and even for people like me who are specifically born for the purpose of being a mediator and a humanitarian, they start at birth working on you year after year after your whole life. Then when you finally change and you start getting emotional, dealing with things that they don't have to tolerate themselves to the extent that you do. Oh yeah, then they're like, oh yeah, that's the proof right there. But anyway, getting back to my main point, I'm trying to say that women, mothers and aunties, they teach their daughters one standard and teach their sons and nephews a different standard that is not realistic, because this helps them to make sure that young man's time, attention, money, and efforts is going to be fully invested into their mother, fully invested into their auntie, and not into building relationships, not into building a family. When they hear the toxic indoctrination from their mom and their auntie, and then they get that same toxic indoctrination from other men who got it from their mom and their auntie, who need to be sure that they live better as they're getting older, who need to be sure that their top priority in their son's life, emotionally and financially. Okay, like these men, they'll they help to reinforce the toxic indoctrination because they had it from their mom and their aunties too. They had the same toxic indoctrination from their female cousins too. We're being told, oh well, a woman is not supposed to have desire for sex, and if she has desire for sex, if she wants sex every day, if she's with you and she wants it every day when she's with you, then she's trying to emasculate you. She's too masculine and too manly. If she wants you to have sex with her more than one time in one night, at least 2 or 3 times a week, oh, well, she's too masculine and she's competing with you and just trying to control you. This is what they teach boys so that they will destroy their relationships and never get married, which is what most black men do. They either never marry, or if they do marry, it's going to be to a woman of a different race who's going to submit to the toxic indoctrination, or they're going to get married to somebody who increases their social status and their money. The few black men who do get married nowadays, and most of them don't, because again, it increases the security of their mother and their aunties when they don't marry and when they have weak relationships with destroyed bonds. This is what they are trained to do so that they can be sure that their mother and their aunties are financially and emotionally stable and secure and cared for. It's okay to be a caretaker for a parent, especially if that parent has been in car accidents like my mother was, and just been beat down from having accidents and having health issues forced on them and being worked like a slave to the point of breaking down. And then you got to deal with people of your own race who want you to have nothing. You got to deal with people of other races who vastly outnumber you and spread a lot of fraud that you're the one breeding like ants to be sure that you have less access to a stable job or a stable home. These issues exist for women. I get it. And they get scared. They get tired of being forced out of a lot of jobs. They get tired of being worked to the point where their body starts breaking down. They get car accidents. They get health issues. I get it. And the toxic indoctrination, it's something that they have adapted and evolved to in order to try to be sure that their sons and nephews are going to take care of them, are going to be their caretakers. It's going to give them money when they need it. It's going to move them in and support them if they can't do it for themselves. And of course, that he's going to secretly hate her because he's raised to be a little narcissist, but the support is still there. And I understand the motivation for the toxic indoctrination, but it has to be stopped, and there has to be an effort to do things in a better way. We have to stop raising sons and nephews and grandsons to be narcissists in a relationship emotionally and sexually, to guarantee that mommy, auntie, and cousins is going to get the money when help is needed. but not their girlfriend, not their baby mama, not their wife. You got to stop raising your sons to destroy their bonds in relationships sexually and emotionally, so that mommy, auntie, and cousins always come first, so that the homeboys always comes first. And I can see it where the money, the effort, and the care, it is there for the mama, the aunties, and the homeboys, and it never fails. But then you look at the relationships with women, and again, they just destroy the shit out of the bonds emotionally, sexually, and financially because they are trained to do that. And when they have other older boys and grown men who have had the same toxic indoctrination from their mothers, from their aunties, saying, "Oh, when you get older, your money is just for you and your mama and not anybody else." Because again, they can, if the mother of the kids falls flat on her face, then they know that the kids can go to foster care or they can go through CPS and go to the grandma. So they know they're either going to get sent to a white woman to be raised, or they're going to be sent to grandma. So it's okay in their minds to tell their sons to not help a young woman. Because in their minds, they're like, oh, okay, yeah, the kids, they can just go to a white woman, they can go to a group home, or they can go to a family member. So again, the toxic indoctrination that men give to each other, it came from their aunties and their mothers who were not secure because of car crashes, because of being overworked to the point of their body breaking down, because of being abandoned by the fathers, because they're aging, because they want to, because they know that they always have people at different jobs in different neighborhoods who don't want them to have anything, and there's uncertainty in their future. Okay, there's a lot of shit they deal with, and that's why with some of these women, even if they're doing okay financially, they will still start indoctrinating the little boys as soon as they're old enough to walk, sometimes even when they're an infant. Like even with my mom's sister, who looks like a supermodel, she was doing okay financially, had a nice home, nice vehicles. But again, for that long-term security, soon as her son was old enough to start walking, I watched her as she told him, "Oh, when you grow up, your money is just for you and your mama and not anyone else." And this boy was only a year old. He just barely started walking and she was already brainwashing him. I watched my auntie do that. I watched my mother as she said, "Oh, a woman is not supposed to want sex. And if a woman has a sex drive, she's a bad woman. She's competing with you, and you shouldn't marry her." And and also in that drama with Will Smith and Jada, with most of the black community bashing the shit out of Jada because she had a boyfriend while she was separated from her cheating husband and considering divorce. I watched the black community, most black people, being so cruel to Jada just for having a boyfriend while she was separated and considering divorce. Talked about her like she was just a straight whore. Okay? And when Will Smith told me the story of the first 4 months of their relationship, I could clearly hear how the same toxic indoctrination that I heard from my mother, I could hear how Will Smith probably received that from his mother and from other black men who had moms like that. I could hear it, while listening to and reading about the story of his first 4 months of the relationship with Jada. Even then he was destroying his relationship with her because Will Smith, he was having sex with Jada several times a day or a night, either or. in drinking and just really enjoying the conversation, the sex, and sometimes drinks with her, several times a day for like 4 months straight at the start of their relationship. But because of the toxic indoctrination from his mother and from other black men who had the same type of mom, he did not mentally comprehend that Jada was having sex with him like that and engaging him in conversation like that because she loved him. She loved him so much. She was bonding with him. She couldn't get enough of him because that was love. She couldn't get enough from him sexually because that was love. She couldn't get enough of him conversationally and emotionally in those first 4 months of that relationship because that was love. That's why they were having sex several times a day, or night, every single day for the first 4 months, like Will Smith said. And he said out his own mouth that he thought that she was just only competing with him sexually. Again, and he believed that because of what his mother brainwashed him into, what his aunties brainwashed him into, so that the women in his family can be secure. And then he had other men with moms and aunties and cousins who have little or no security. They probably brainwashed him too, the men who come from women like that. And so he comes to Jada. He's found real love. The sex is there, and it's amazing, and it's several times a day, every day or every night for 4 months straight. The conversation is great. They have some drinks in the mix. And he ruined it because he translated that love as, oh, well, you're just trying to compete with me and I'm going to please you sexually or die trying. So again, because he just been brainwashed by a whole bunch of niggas who come from mothers and aunties and cousins who are trying to secure their future. He's sitting there and the woman couldn't even love him in a healthy way without being judged for it. And I was horrified and disgusted. And I know that destruction that Will Smith did to his relationship in the first 4 months, that's probably the number one reason why they were in an open relationship that involved sex with other people, because he was destroying that bond. I could see if they had been together for years, but no, they hadn't even been together that long before they started doing that. So, and I know it's because he was destroying the relationship. Jada did not want to marry him. It was Will Smith's mother that talked her into marrying him. And I understand that she didn't want to marry him before the intervention of Will Smith's mother. I know she didn't want to marry him because she could clearly see that something was going on in his head that was not right and it was twisted, and she just couldn't figure out what it was. She knew on some level that something wasn't right. And she just didn't know enough about the toxic indoctrination that comes from abandoned females, overworked females, car crash injured females who don't have future security. The toxic indoctrination that women like that do to their sons and nephews. Maybe Jada didn't know anything about that. Maybe she didn't get to witness that in her childhood or as a young adult. So when she was confronted with that in a relationship with Will Smith, she didn't recognize it. And even if she did recognize it, there's probably little or nothing she could have done to save her relationship if she had seen it. And here she is. So, and they're talking about her like she's dog shit because she didn't want to marry this man. And because again, these are people who have multiple generations of mothers in Africa, mothers in Arab nations, mothers in America who don't have a certain future. Their job is not certain. Them being allowed to keep their home, it's not certain. Them having someone to take care of them when they get old, it's not certain. Them not being thrown out on the streets as soon as their husband dies, like what a lot of people in India do. In India, a lot of people, they'll throw the mother out on the streets as soon as the husband dies. There's a lot of families that do that. They're like, oh, he's dead, you gotta go. So being in a more tribal or traditional or polygamous culture, it's not a guarantee of security. A dude, he can have 1 or 2, 10 or 25 other women and divorce half of y'all. And meanwhile, some other guy's laid up in jail sucking dick or laid in a grave. So he could marry all 25 of y'all and divorce 13. So again, even in Arab nations, your future's not secure because a dude, and I even watched the testimony of an elderly Arab man who married 25 women and divorced 13 of them. So if that son or that nephew or those cousins are not indoctrinated to be more loyal to them and give little or no bond and loyalty to a girlfriend or a wife, if those boys are not indoctrinated, what are they going to do? Most of them are not allowed to have jobs because women cannot work in that country. What are they going to do except sleep outdoors and maybe sell ass and get diseases? Because they're not allowed to work. And then if they become a caretaker, then they got people who don't want to pay them, people who abuse them, people who look at them like as if they're not doing a real job that should be valued and respected. And even in America, you have that. But in third world countries, it's worse. It's in third world countries, some of them will beat their house girl like a fucking slave. And literally treat them borderline like a slave because they're a caretaker. It don't matter if they're, and here in America, there's the lack of appreciation and the toxicity. And even in America, they'll treat you like you deserve to be homeless if you're a caretaker too. You spend years of your life taking care of other people's kids, other people's parents, and then they'll tell you to your face that you just deserve to be homeless. They don't care that their kids have straight A's in school and college degrees because of you. They don't care that their kids are married and have good relationships because of you. They don't care that their mom, their dad is safe, secure, fed, and protected with no more strangers knocking on the door because of you. They don't care, and they'll tell you to your face that you deserve to be homeless, that you deserve to have little or no pay, that you're just a waste of space and resources and food. Whether you're in a wealthy nation or a third world nation where they'll beat the shit out of you and literally take that step to treat you like a slave, no matter which side you're on. This is how most people look at female caretakers. And so with that said, a lot of women, they don't want to take the risk of ending up in that terrible fate of being thrown out on the streets because a dude's benefit, some Arab man, some African, some American man is benefiting from mass incarceration, and he's got 2 or 10 or 25 wives, so he decide he's gonna divorce half of them. Okay, then where are you supposed to go? Where are you supposed to live? Where are you supposed to work? And even if you're in America, what happens when you're overworked to the point where your body starts breaking down? And people, they don't care about your individual circumstances. All you hear from them is, oh, well, I'm older and I do this. I'm older and I do that. So why aren't you doing it? Why shouldn't you be doing it? People, they don't fucking care. Or they'll be like, well, you shouldn't have that job or that position as a disabled person. We need to go look and try to go find some disabled women who's our race. We need to try to go look and try to go find some disabled or elderly women who's our religion or from our tribe or our country, and we need to go find some who really didn't want the fucking job in the first place, and we need to go find them and put them in your job that they didn't want. You know, where they're like, oh, why are you not doing it? And then when you do it, they're trying to find every female under the sun saying, oh, we got to get rid of her because this other female who's one of us, who's from our neighborhood, our family, our friend, our religion, our race, our whatever. Oh, she needs it more. And then boom, you're out of a job. You're out of a husband. You're out of a house. Or they got your kids and getting a check every month because they don't qualify for welfare. This is the real deal. This is the real deal cutthroat shit that women are dealing with in wealthy nations. This is the real deal shit they dealing with in poor nations. It's brutal out here. And this is the real reason why women in so many cultures have brainwashed and indoctrinated their sons and nephews and cousins to believe that only bad women want sex. Only bad women bond with you. If a woman is hurt emotionally or upset that you cheated on her, that means she's mentally ill. That's why they teach these men these things, because they know their future is not guaranteed. It's not guaranteed in that job where they might be worked half to death. It's not, worked to the point where their body starts breaking down and nobody cares. They know their future's not guaranteed even in a higher paying job, because the minute somebody wants their friend, their family, or someone of their race or their country, whatever, to have that position, they're not guaranteed to keep that job or even to get another one in that same field. They know that even if they're in an Arab or African country and a dude got 25 to 200 wives, because they done slaughtered enough other men and threw enough other men in jail, sucking each other's dicks where they can do that. They know even then their position is not secure, because they can still get divorced and put out the house. They know that if they're married to a man, his kids by another woman can throw her ass out on the streets and leave her panhandling, or maybe even kill her so they don't have to take care of her in her old age. And that's a tradition too from a third world country, where you set the wife on fire after the husband dies because that's his wife. She's not your mama and you don't want to take care of her. So what you do, you have a tradition where you say, oh, if you don't throw yourself into that man's cremation fires, then you're a bad woman and you never loved him. That was a tradition that only just recently became illegal a very short time ago in a third world country. So I'm saying that the epidemic of narcissism, it really is rooted in the brainwashing that comes from men who have toxic mothers, who have been beat up, overworked to the point of falling apart and abandoned. It comes from women knowing they have little or no security moving forward, because the men are slaughtering and mass incarcerating enough men where, they can share a man, and it's no guarantee of security because they still get rid of your ass anyway, even if he has other women. Just like the Arab men who abandon kids all over the planet, making women single mothers all over the planet. Arab men who could have several wives and divorce half of them, and they're like, hey, you're on your own. And then with the toxic indoctrination, if you are engaging a man in a certain way because you can't get enough of him because you love him and the sexual chemistry is really great. You're engaging him in a certain way because that bond is there emotionally and the conversation is good. Like you can't even do that because with the toxic indoctrination, automatically he's gonna be thinking, oh my God, you're a bad woman. You're a whore. Or you might be a pedophile who's going to molest little boys because you actually want to have sex with me. And see that, and you have a lucky few guys who actually find the type of woman who meets their mom's unrealistic standards. And the very, very few black men who get married to a woman that meets their mom and auntie and cousins unrealistic standards, it's going to be a woman who has very little or no fertility. That's the woman who's going to be struggling to have an orgasm. That's the woman who's probably never had an orgasm at any point in her entire life. That's the woman who's either going to give him 0 children in a marriage or struggle to maybe give him 1 or 2 kids. Really struggling over a long period of time trying to get pregnant intentionally. The women who don't have orgasms and who have very little or no fertility, those are the women who have the higher rates of stable relationships and stable marriage, because those are the women who meet the standards that other women who have money and other women who don't have money have set to be sure that that man's money and time and effort and care and resources is going to be invested into mama, into aunties, into cousins. So that way, the sons and the nephews can be their security for when or if life beats the shit out of them, which happens more often than not. So black men, especially, they try to say that women are the root of a lot of the problems in the black community. But the truth, what they really mean, what they're really saying is you don't measure up to the unrealistic expectations that I've been brainwashed into by women who don't have a secure future in my family. You don't measure up to the unrealistic expectations that were reinforced in me through other men whose mothers also have an uncertain future. So because you don't measure up to these unrealistic expectations, that's why you deserve to walk around with 80% of you unmarried, while my brothers are getting financially abused, mass murdered, and mass incarcerated on both sides of the ocean. That's why you deserve to have 80% of you unmarried, while this is done to them all over the world. You don't measure up to my unrealistic expectations. You don't measure up to my false beliefs. That's the complete opposite of what mom taught you to do, what auntie, what sister taught you to do. And they don't even know that their mom, their auntie, their sister's teaching you the opposite of what they're being taught. And again, these are adaptive measures. The things that the husband shall never come to know. That's how they like to put it in India, because this is not limited to just one country, but it's on display in the black community because the manifestation is the most severe among black people. So it's more obvious with black people, even though it is an issue in other races, it's the worst for our people, because then they can say, oh, you gotta do it for the culture. So that's why you have, oh, the husband shall never come to know. The little sayings like that, where they'll tell you one set of things to do to try to survive and to try to live better for yourself. But then they'll go and lie to the sons, like saying, oh, She's a bad woman. And then boom, he got a wife who has little or no infertility or no orgasms. And he's like, oh wow, I found the perfect woman who's not an evil, emasculating slut. They'll go find a woman who's a narcissist who has little or no emotional bonding with him and really don't care what the fuck he does in a relationship. And then he'll be like, oh, I found the perfect woman who never gets hurt by my cheating emotionally and never gets jealous. You know, because again, a human woman of any race, she's gonna feel hurt or angry over being cheated on because she's not a monkey. She's not a horse. She's not a cow. Those natural instincts are not mental illness, and if she's living like a hoe, it might be because she knows she's not going to get future security from you. If she's living like a hoe, it might be because you're going to look at her natural instinctive way of being as something toxic or mentally ill when it's not. She's not a monkey. She's not a cow. She's not a horse. She's not a chicken. A woman is not a narcissist. And literally the only time in my entire existence that I have ever witnessed any man telling a younger man that a woman is not the same as the horses and cows being bred on the farm. Only time I've ever seen that is like seeing a white guy telling that to a young white man. We're like, look, the women, they're not exactly the same as the cows and horses we're breeding on this farm. You might think they are, but they're really not. And that's actually true. You might have, because like I said, some women, they do have a lower sex drive and little or no fertility or no orgasms. Okay, yeah. That woman is the perfect candidate to be a side chick or to be in a polygamous relationship. She is the perfect candidate for that. But, but the fact of the matter is, most of us are not like that. And that's why we're looked at as being deserved to have 80% of us unmarried while they watch their brothers get mass murdered and mass incarcerated on both sides of the ocean. They're looking at us like we deserve to get beat up and murdered and abandoned at rates 4 times higher than any other race. Because their female relatives need to survive. They need to have these guys indoctrinated, and that, when black men say that it's the fault of black women that the community and the families are just in total chaos and falling apart, like when they, and with us being vastly outnumbered, most of our women and men have brainwashed each other into thinking that we're not vastly outnumbered. I mean, totally out of touch with reality because of conditioning they do on each other. Because again, if you brainwash your son or your nephew into believing that black women are birthing most of the babies, if you brainwash them into believing that we're the majority instead of the truth, which is that we're less than 12% of America's population, if you believe them to brainwash these young boys and young men into believing the opposite, okay, then he's going to feel more comfortable with destroying his relationship with a girlfriend or a wife. He's going to feel more comfortable with, abandoning a girlfriend or a wife because he thinks that the majority of people in this country are black, and so they must have control over the government assistance. They must have control over everything, and there's guaranteed help, and it's gonna be okay. That's what he's thinking. So, and so that's how that's how they feel more comfortable with abandoning and destroying relationships. So that way, the mom, the aunties, the cousins are guaranteed to be financially supported and taken care of when they're dealing with people who don't want them to have better jobs and keep it, when they're dealing with people who don't want them to have lower income jobs and will work them to the point where their body's falling apart. when they're dealing with being abandoned and beat up by other men who have the same type of toxic indoctrination, the main thing is they always have their son and their nephews to fall back on. And if you're a woman and you're the black sheep in the family, okay, well, that just means you have to fend for yourself materially and financially. They plan that. They plan it. You're not doing the husband shall never come to know thing that's done on both sides of the ocean in situations with women who are not secure. If you're not doing that, then you're a liability because you're not bringing in resources. So then you got to get cut off and not be in the loop. It's not an accident. It's not an accident. And they know they're more secure by indoctrinating the sons and the nephews like this, because they know that most men are narcissists and only cares for themselves. It's like a negative reinforcing loop that reinforces itself over and over and over again, because once you brainwash and condition your sons and nephews, they're going to reinforce it in other males who have had the same fucking thing. And then you got this toxic thing that just goes over it, and it just doesn't stop. And it just keeps getting renewed, reinforced every generation. And then when it's getting reinforced every generation, then you call it culture. You call it just the way men are, when the truth is, you intentionally did this to them because you're not secure, because other people are not going to have your back to the extent that they claim, because that your husband, your community, your society is not going to have your back. That's why you brainwash these men into thinking that you're the majority of the population when you're far from it. So that way, when he runs out and abandons his wife, abandons his girlfriend, falsely believing that her and the kids are going to be okay, while strangers get paid to take the kids away and rape them and test pharmaceutical drugs on them, while all that craziness is going on, mama's secure financially, auntie cousins are secure financially because he's giving them money and taking care of them. In some cases, in some families, the cousins are even fucking him, where as soon as he turned 11, as soon as he turned 12, and like I said, I've had men of different races to confide in me, where overseas and here, men, they've had teenage female family members to start molesting them as soon as they turn 5 years old. Because again, you have this circuit and cycle of chaos, where you got people isolating teenage boys and teenage girls. So then you got a teenage girl molesting a 5-year-old and beating him up to keep quiet about it, because she just don't have a compassionate and disciplined nature. And why she shouldn't even be feeling attracted to a 5-year-old. That's just mentally ill to feel sexually attracted to a little kid. That's sick. But again, and maybe some men in the family did it to her. People who isolate their teenage girls and isolate their teenage boys and give them little or no access to the opposite gender, you have a lot of chaos like that. And nobody's married. Nobody's married as a teenager. Nobody has a husband. Nobody has a wife. So how is it monogamy's fault that you have all these men who grew up getting raped and bullied by older teenage boys and grown men, grew up getting raped and molested by these older dudes and getting bullied to keep quiet about it? All these men who have been through that. Okay, well, how is it that monogamy is to blame when half the time it's an unmarried teenager, and unmarried young adult, and who does it? It's not always men who have a wife. A lot of times it's older boys, young adult men who's preying on these little boys and preying on other little girls, and then the girls, they turn and they want to molest their brother, they want to molest their female cousin, they want to try to touch on their uncle or their male cousin because some sick motherfucker did it to them. It's like a toxic cycle. You got this going on among all races of people on both sides of the ocean, and then you can't even talk about breaking the cycle, because then the first thing in their mind, they're thinking, oh, this is just how we are, this is just the way we gotta be. And if you're talking about breaking the cycle, if you're talking about working with angels, maybe you're just talking about killing all of us because we're not going to stop refusing to address the real roots of the problem. You know, that's how they think. Or they'll tell people, oh, the Hebrew God is just an axe murderer. Oh, the angels, they're just killers. They're just wild savages who want to force their opinions and their ways on other people. And meanwhile, they got all kinds of chaos and savagery in their family. They got chaos and savagery in their hospitals, in their clinics. They got chaos and savagery in their courtrooms. They got chaos and savagery in their places of employment and in their jails. And as long as it's hidden well enough where you can't physically see it all the time, then that gives them the freedom to do these things intentionally, on purpose, and then turn around and say, oh, you're just trying to force opinions on other people. You're just trying to deal with a spirit and angels or aliens or whatever who just wants to murder people and doesn't want to know what they're talking about. And I'll be thinking to myself sometimes, bitch, they know what the fuck they talking about. They know what awful shit that you and other people have been doing because you're hurting, because you're suffering, because your future is not secure. And even though you're doing it because you're hurting, you're suffering, and your future is not secure, you still have to fucking stop. There are higher powers, whether it's gods, whether it's aliens. They can get rid of you if you don't stop. Yes, you're doing it because your future's uncertain and you're hurting. And your kids are becoming narcissists or becoming predators or becoming oppressors because other people around them are helping to reinforce the same shit that you indoctrinated into them. It's a vicious cycle, and most of y'all, you just trapped in it over and over and over again. You know, and incidents like the 2 months of nonstop blood red rain within 48 hours of Hebrew Judgment Day, Yom Kippur, in 2001, incidents like that on holy days and national holidays, it's a reminder to people that we have to at least try to do everything we can in our habits, our teachings, and our indoctrination in the next generation. We have to try to do what we can to break our people, and if necessary, others, out of the toxic cycles that people have been stuck in for far too long in regard to our societal problems at the family level, the community level, a government level. We have to be trying. And if we don't try, there are higher powers, whether it's aliens, deities, or angels or whatever. We have to try because there are higher powers that can get rid of us if that's the only way to break it. Like Look at the cultures of South America where they would cut the heart out of a virgin on top of a pyramid as a sacrifice. You know, offering beautiful young women as sacrifices to the sun god. Where are they? Where their great stone cities and stone temples, it's all empty. They continued on like that for a long time in their culture and their way, and they didn't break their cycles. They didn't change their habits. So where are they today? Yeah, there's people there, but genetically by DNA testing, they're not the originals. Not quite the same. They got invaded, mass murdered, and heavily blended out to the point where they don't even genetically match the people who built the temples anymore. A lot of times, they got wiped out. You know, nations rise and nations fall. And the Romans, you know, the boy lover Romans, the boy lovers. They had a great empire too. They had some of the wildest, most perverted, most gluttonous, disgustingly rich parties and celebrations and lifestyles imaginable, especially Emperor Caligula, who was fucking crazy, and he's known for that. But the people who lived that lifestyle, where are they gone? Where are they now? Yeah, there's people there on that land, but that whole civilization, it's gone. It got replaced by something else. And now you have the Catholic Church, where the priests, they do the same shit as the Romans, but Christianity just taught them to hide it. They didn't take on the real teachings and do what they really needed to do to make real changes internally and in the community. No, they didn't do that. Instead, they just learned how to continue doing the same shit the Romans did, but just hiding it better. You know, like, you know, just going through the motions instead of doing the parts that leads to real change and real breaking of cycles. And I've noticed that, and it's not just the Italians that's guilty of that. There's a lot of cultures where they had a lot of shit that they were already doing before the church got there, and then they become Christians, and they don't embrace any of the parts of Christianity that leads to real change internally or real change at the community and society level. You know, instead, they're like, oh, okay, well, we're Christian now, so we're going to just like do the bare minimum and just do a better job at hiding what we were already doing before the church got here. You know, and that's why you have a lot of black people on Facebook every day saying, oh, the church created all these problems. The church is why our men do this, why our men do that. And they were already doing it. The only difference is that white people tend to write things down. White people tend to document things. So we can look back over the course of the last 12,000 years and accurately say that the chaos we see in the Catholic Church, it was already there before they took on a false Christianity that does not embrace the parts for real, deeper change internally and in society. We can look at 12,000 years of white history and say they were already doing a lot of that sick Catholic you know, like with the priests snorting cocaine, having gay orgies, and molesting kids and raping nuns. They were already doing a lot of shit like that, going back 12,000 years, especially in the Roman Empire. White people know the church didn't cause that. The church just helps them to do the bare minimum of trying to have a somewhat more orderly society. And we don't have the luxury of looking back over the last 12,000 years because people of color don't like to document things to the same extent that white people do. Not to the same degree. Like, look at the Egyptians, for example. Egyptian mummies tested positive for cocaine. Archaeologists found marijuana in the incense altars for early Israeli Christian churches, where they had weed in the incense at the early church in Israel. They found a mummified white male merchant nomad with weed in the deserts of China. Okay, well, America is the only place in the world where cocaine and marijuana was growing in ancient times. Like cocaine and weed, it's indigenous to America. But when you look at all the writings on the walls that the Egyptians did, when you look at all the ancient Sumerian cuneiform tablets and all these different ancient scrolls and all things written on scrolls, things etched in stone and painted in temples, did they ever say anything about the fact that they were buying massive amounts of cocaine from America? No. Did they ever say anything about buying weed from America? No. There was international trade in ancient times. We black people, Asians, we were all over the fucking map, trading internationally, moving, relocating, settling in other places. Black people built all these pyramids all over the place. Like, black people and Asians, we've been everywhere. Okay? That's why you had white male merchant nomads being found with drugs from America, laid up mummified in a desert of China. People, they had international trade long before Christopher Columbus. There was Indians who sailed to Europe and was exploring and visiting Europe. There's black people who had international trade in colonies all across the planet with stone temples, stone cities, pyramids, all that. So what I'm trying to say is that people of color did not thoroughly document the cocaine trade. They did not thoroughly document the marijuana trade internationally in ancient times. And people of color also did not thoroughly document the chaos that was going on in their temples, homes, and families in ancient times. Now, the Hebrews, I can say that the Hebrews were a slight exception to that rule, because with the Hebrew culture, it's like the Hebrew prophets and also